Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Blueprint Podcast. Real people, real stories. Chasing dreams, overcoming obstacles. Come get inspired and take action. I know you ready. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Blueprint. It's been quite a while, but no better way than to start with my good friend Josh Rosemore. Josh, how are you?
Hey, good to see you guys.
Lester, it's great to have you back on and see you again.
Feeling fresh and ready to go, boys.
Yeah, so let's hop right into it. So I guess introduce who Josh is. So Josh and I actually grew up together. We went to school, actually we're in the same college together, have been friends for a long time. So it's been awesome to see, Josh, your success that you've had really starting from when you were in college and now progressing to basically helping your father run a large real estate company. So what's that been like? And did you ever expect yourself to be at this type of real estate and running a real estate company at this scale?
Yeah, so working for your family is always a interesting process. I didn't really expect to be working for my father until probably towards the end of college for me. Um, I always knew he did commercial real estate and it always sort of interested me. Um, But once COVID hit, I had a bunch of free time on my hands, and my father essentially told me, he said, instead of, playing games or um, messing around, why don't you try and find sites for us? So he gave me the breakdown on how to find convenience store sites, how to find quick service restaurant sites. And from that point on, I kind of fell in love with it. And then after college, once I, was able to dedicate myself towards it, I was able to get into development. So reviewing leases, working with civil engineers and trying to find sites more intensely became my life from that point on. So,
Yeah, and I think the cool thing with what you do is there's so many different facets to your company. So you have the managing of the actual property, you have the managing of the general contractors on site and the subcontractors, but then you also have the managing of going, yourself going out and actually having to make connections with other investors in the area and local politicians and every type of person you think that could help benefit you. And that to me is something going to college doesn't teach, and it's learning to talk to people of all ages and all different companies and backgrounds to really propel your company to the next level. So how did you learn to take that leap with making learning to make connections with other quote unquote moguls and or really successful business people around your industry?
yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Probably something I ask myself a lot. In all honesty, if I had the choice, I probably wouldn't have gone to college because it really didn't teach me much in terms of, uh, you know, learning the business and uh, trying to connect with tenants, site selectors for tenants, and wealthy landowners who we're trying to work with. Um, the actual experience reaching out to people and understanding what their needs are in order that we can capitalize on that. That sounds kind of, uh, that doesn't sound like the best phrasing of it, but learning what other people's needs are in order to benefit your own business um, is probably the most valuable thing I've learned. And I wish I was doing that for 4 years before, as opposed to going to college. So,
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting parallel with you, Lester, that well, Josh, you're always looking around different states, finding new areas, um, having to make connections with people in new states and different areas. And Lester, that's, in a sense, that's kind of what you do all day is reaching out to people in different states and finding new territories and trying to bring people into the CR3 franchise family, and learning to really adapt in the different cultures and areas in the United States, but also seeking opportunity. So there's a little bit of the same sort of conceptualizing there with how Josh runs his company and how you're running your operations day to day. And so I guess how did you have to learn to really make that transition and from being you worked for a CRM, was it job progress, and now you're sitting and meeting and talking to people every single day to try to not convince them, but tell them why they should join the CR3 franchise.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it seems like it would be so different. It's exactly the same. Early on in the stages of job progress, had to take a look at this national footprint and realize how I was going to develop relationships with. That's what I specialize in, is relationships and people, and connecting people to the right opportunities. So I looked around and I said, how can I get a wide cast net out here? It was through the suppliers and the manufacturers. They already had the relationships already built. I just needed to find a way to get to the territory managers to then promote our software that can then help these individuals be more organized. And then, in essence, it's going to start to make them more money. And then it's going to drive them to purchase more materials, all that kind of stuff. But what it did for me, it gave me the ability to go under thousands of hoods all over the country. As you said, it's very different, in the Southeast and the Midwest, right? You gotta talk a little bit slower, talk a little bit faster, move at people's pace. Everyone kind of thinks the same, but we all just deliver that in the same way. So we think it's different, but it's not. Um, but now, being under all of these hoods and really seeing how I can help these individuals past the software. The software is the foundation, right? That's where you can see all the analytics and all the data to make the right decisions. And as long as you can do the right things, you can start to scale that business. So now, moving over into what we're doing now, which is essentially a franchise concept, which is nothing more than a business strategy. I think everything I was doing in the software space is the same exact thing I'm doing now. Because what we did, we were really an arm of support rather than just providing them a software. And I think that's why we grew our brand as quick as we did, and actually made it to a private equity sale, because we scaled, and we did that the right way. And our contractors loved us for it. But we went out of our way, whether it was 6 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock at night, we picked up. We weren't a 9 to 5 software vendor, and you got to, get on a list, and we got to call you back in 3 or 4 days because you got to act quick. So, to answer your question, I'm kind of doing things exactly the way I was doing them before, but I'm able to provide a contractor much more benefit when it comes to an end-to-end solution and not just the software piece.
Yeah, and I part of the reason that I thought it was so interesting to have Josh on here is, uh, in a sense, Josh, we bring in strategic partners from around the country, people who we think will be great to the franchise, the CR3 franchise edition. But in a sense, Josh, you're also bringing on strategic partners for these deals. I mean, you have all this land, but you need to find not only, you know, quote unquote strategic partners for yourself who want to be included in this land. You have to find commercial tenants, and you need to find commercial tenants who, not just anybody, but someone that's going to be successful on this land. You have to put together pro formas, and you have to convince them, come be a part of our operation and our business, because it's not just going to benefit us, but it's going to benefit you as well. And essentially, that to me is, I don't know if that's really just the root of business. It's just finding strategic partners and help elevate each other. But as I've gaining more experience, it's, to me, seemingly more, that's, you can't, for the most part, really get to your goals without having quote unquote strategic partnerships.
Yeah.
And it's just really, as you get bigger as a company, it's just a scale thing, right? You need more strategic partners as you grow, which can be a scary thing, having to trust someone that's coming in and sees the same vision as you. But it's something that's necessary.
Yeah, yeah, and also, a lot of people think, like with real estate, that when you have a partner as a tenant, you're just dealing with the tenant as a whole. So if we're trying to put Starbucks at a site or McDonald's, people think that our strategic partner is that entity, that corporate entity. But
Mhm.
really, who we're partnering with is the individual that's leading that operation. So a lot
Mhm.
of times it'll be the site selector, asset manager for McDonald's in that area. So we need to have trust in them that we're going to be able to coordinate. We're going to be able to bring this project to full approvals, to breaking ground. Um, our relationship with them is probably the most important aspect of that project. So it really comes down to the individual who we're connecting with. So
How do you guys evaluate, your roofing and exterior contractors that you're putting on these projects?
so I'm not sure if this is the right answer, but what we shoot for is to not have to do that, um, because with our tenants, we usually shoot for ground leases, because that requires the least amount of capital outlays on our end. So if we can just prep the pad, make sure, utilities are stubbed to the pad, and then a tenant just comes in and builds their store and pays us rent, that's
Mhm.
the most ideal scenario for us. Um, but when we had to deal with Chipotle's and Starbucks, um, usually our general contractor will pick out the roofing subcontractor. But in the past, we have had to do that. What we usually look for is, a national presence, um, or even a regional presence, good track record, and experience working with larger users, home builders, or national tenants. The experience with larger projects speaks to the ability of a company to execute on individual projects. Because if you can throw yourself into a crazy hurricane, then you can, weather a smaller storm a lot easier. So,
That makes
And
sense.
in
yeah.
terms of, would you do you find building that relationship with these vendors or contractors in these areas, like the roofing, siding, window companies, like CR3, is just as important as making sure that the company is quote unquote the cheapest bid? Or do you find that the more you build relationships, the easier the process is, and that you can trust them in a way that even if the price is coming in a little bit higher than some of the other bids, it's got to be because uh, they're going to perform the highest output.
Yeah. So, I mean, when I first started, I always thought that the cheaper, the better. But what I've come to realize, especially with general contractors and subcontractors, that experience and the relationship is gonna make sure the project is as efficient and cheap as it could be. Because if you have someone that you don't trust, but they came in with the cheapest bid, in all likelihood, they're going to be the most expensive bid because they're going to have tons of change orders. They're going to, try and find ways that they can eke out more money. Someone that you can have a relationship with, talk to, and has that track record, even though they may be more middle of the pack initially, and then sometimes they're even cheaper because they have economies of scale. But um, the ones that you can trust and have that track record are gonna end up being the fastest and the cheapest at the end of the day. So,
And not to say that in the long run you'll have less issues.
yeah,
If you hire someone cheaper who doesn't do it right, you're going to be fixing that over the course of 20 years. It's going to cost you a lot more than if you just pay a little bit more upfront to make sure it was done right.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Are you seeing any trends as far as design, sustainability, and material innovation when it comes to roofing or exterior projects in your mind?
Not on my end. I think from the developer side, uh,
Hmm.
they always are trying to push it off onto the tenant, just so because we're just very cost conscious. But when we do have to use it, I think we typically are trying to go for the longest lasting option. So no built up roofs. We're not going for that. We're going for something that we can have a true 20-year warranty on and not have to worry about it in 5 years from now.
You mean a lifetime warranty doesn't suck you in?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's extremely intriguing to hear, and I think that's interesting, Lester, because and Josh, especially for you as well, when you're identifying new areas, the economic codes and the environmental codes, all of that changes so rapidly. Like where I'm based in Maryland, but our company's based in Pennsylvania, and just the environmental and the processes to getting the you know through the county and the state, getting all of your stuff accepted and whatnot changes so drastically. Josh, that's got to be a real pain learning different environmental codes, and getting, understanding how the different processes work as you move to different states.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, going to a new state definitely has a learning curve to it. The typically what people look at is the crime index. But what people don't really know is that there's kind of an unspoken crime index where tenants, like, even though it may be the national average, which national tenants will go to, um, there may be some sort of sigma with the city, and you won't know that until potentially you have a good bit of money out. So, what we started doing is reaching out to numerous different commercial brokers in the area, not mentioning this site, but mentioning their area, uh, the specific area, and trying to get their feedback on it, just so we can kind of set a safety net for ourselves in case we're missing something by not having boots on the ground initially. So,
Yeah. And so I want to transition a little bit, especially I would say a lot of our listeners are CR3 franchises, but also exterior modelers, around the country, or people running their own business. But someone like you who's got a large real estate development company, um, a lot of people are always probably trying to come to you to solicit business and try to get in with you guys. What is some pieces of advice that you can give, I guess, tailored towards a CR3 franchise if they're looking to start trying to build partnerships and relationships with big developers, big accounts like you?
that's a really good question. I never actually put myself in the shoes of the contractor to, try and think that, which is probably something I should be doing. It's always good to put yourself in someone else's shoes. What would be, I guess, just a great elevator pitch off the bat? If you can send us a solid bid, uh, and before the bid process, if you can send us previous experience on working on similar projects and working in this state, like, I think what we've learned is when we want to start working with a tenant, we want to know where that tenant is expanding to, so we can get ahead of the game, and then bring them a site uh, for where they're expanding to. So from the contractor's perspective, if they know we're working in certain sites and if we're having certain difficulties, and they can learn a little bit about us and then work off of that, that would kind of give them the advantage, so they can tailor their elevator pitch to us. And then if they can make a competitive bid and then show a proven record, I would say that's the most efficient route. So,
And so I guess really, and that's pretty interesting, because then I can ask you, I'll give you an example. We have, again, CR3 strategic partners all over the country, someone who runs their own branch in a state. And so if they came to you and said, look, Josh, let's say, yeah, I want to get some of your roofs, right? And they said, look, I'm part of a national brand, CR3. We're now in, X amount of states, and we handle X amount of accounts, and when we have the handle to really get things done quickly, and we have the economies of scale, and we have the backing behind us, you're saying that would probably go a long way with you guys, right? Knowing that they're part of a company that has that big backing to them, that has that reputation, that they're all around the country.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, even a step further, if they went on our website and saw we have a big mixed use project in Southern Virginia, Hampton, Virginia. Um, if they came to us and said, um, we see you have a project out there, our franchise is actually 2 miles down from this site. So if anything comes up, we'd love to be one of the first bids. That would, you know, go 10 times farther than most contractors that, put you on their email blast,
Mm,
like a tailored strategic approach is unique.
it's interesting.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
So,
Yeah, well, Josh, we don't want to take too much of your time because I know you got to go out there and find some more land to buy. Only so much land in this world. So uh, it's been awesome getting to learn from you, Josh, and just being a good friend of yours as well. It's great, when you get to see your friends really elevate themselves and find success. So that's been a blessing right there. And thank you. I really appreciate you coming on our podcast today and getting to learn from you. I think hopefully a lot of our strategic partners can also take some stuff away from hearing from you.
yeah, thank you, Matt. And same to you. It's good being your friend and learning a lot of stuff from you and watching as you expand to numerous different industries and succeeding in both of them is pretty cool. And Lester, it's been a pleasure. It's great to meet you, and I know Matt probably really enjoys working with you just off this podcast. So
Yeah.
He
Go ahead.
he holds me accountable. When he texts me at 4:30 in the morning to rise and shine, it's time to go. So
Yeah, no, absolutely appreciate it, Josh. We loved having you on, man. And hopefully in a few months we can check back in and talk about some big projects we can do together.
all right, awesome. I'd love that.
all right, guys, thank you, and to the moon, Lester.
Adios. Let's go.
All right, see you guys.